The things that I heard, at least a dozen different charges from across the nation of lawlessness, are certainly disturbing not only to me but to most militia members. And we are certainly totally against violence. What I do want people to understand through these hearings today is what is the militia today and who are the people that are involved in the militia. I think what we heard today so far in testimony have been very, very, very extreme elements, and in most cases were individuals that were not directly associated with what we would call the mainstream militia movement today. And that's what I would like to address, is who that mainstream militia is. It is a cross-section of Americans, of every type of occupation that there is, everything from attorneys to doctors, to mechanics, to nurses, to businessmen of all types. They are everyday Americans that are very, very concerned with what's going on in their country. And we applaud that. We are excited that once again in this nation people are getting involved in their government. We are setting up programs right now to help people start registering to vote and going to the polls and getting involved in the legislation and the process that we all love. The militias, as many times has been reported in the media, that they hate their government. This is not so. We think that our government, that this body is the finest form of government in the world, and it could not be better. Are there problems in government? Certainly there's problems. You can hardly find an American that doesn't have something to complain about. Your body itself, whether you're Republican or Democrat, is complaining about the other side. That's America. That's good and that's healthy. And we believe in the freedom of speech. We do not believe in hatred. We do not believe in racism. And if you'll look over very, very carefully of all of the things that you've heard me say in the media and some of the others that have said in the media, we have said nothing about hate. We have said nothing about racism. We have not been anti-Semitic. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't fringe elements out there, and I'm not saying that over the last 14 months, when this organization, this group that is growing across the country, has started getting public attention because we have been out in the open, because we have been very public. We have gotten a lot of media. I'm not going to say that others aren't going to try to attach themselves to our coattails and take that ride and try to get their public attention too, but it is wrong. If they use hate, if they use violence, if they do not abide the law, we will be the first to expose them. We will be the first, if they are breaking the law, to turn them over to the law enforcement agencies. In my state, if you'll check the record, you'll find that we have stood behind our law enforcement fully. We have also initiated legislation in our state to support and empower our sheriffs and other law officials. We are law-abiding, God-fearing Americans. And we ask that this Congress will recognize that we represent literally millions of people in this country that are once again getting involved. And the one thing that they see, the one reason that this movement has grown so rapidly over the last 14 months is because the people do see a voice for them in the militia. And we're excited to be that voice, and we want to be an honest voice and an open voice. And there's some fears out there in the country. You've heard about some of the fears this morning. Whether the fear has substance to it or not, it's still a fear, and it needs to be addressed. All fears need to be addressed and expose those fears. If they're real, then let's work on them. If they're not real, then let's expose them for what they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Mr. Johnson.
Hi, how you guys doing? Senators? One of the things I wanted to bring up, first let me tell you who I am. Name's James Johnson. I'm co-founder of a group called E Pluribus Unum, and one of the leaders and spokesperson for the Ohio Unorganized Militia. I've spoken to many groups around Ohio and in other states, and I've also helped start some groups. Now, what I wanted to touch on was what Mr. Thompson said. I think he focused on a key point, which was why these groups are forming. Why is it growing like it is? And that's some of the topics that need to be addressed, and I think maybe you can talk to some people on the inside like you have here to answer those questions. To put it to you bluntly, some of the legislation that's coming out of Washington, some of the executive actions that are taking place, ladies and gentlemen, these things started a revolution 200 years ago and got this country started. And the people are seeing this. The national news media and the actions of this government is some of the best recruitment we could have. We don't have to say much. All you have to do is talk to the average person out there to tell you, how do you feel about your government? And the people you look at here, we're the calm ones. We're the ones that calm people down. Now, I'm speaking here as a representative for my state and other groups that I know of. The animosity that I see out there between the citizens, all of them, and the government is frightening. What they did was, after listening to all these abuses and government atrocities that you're going to hear here today, and they saw they were going to no avail, they decided to see what they could do to become part of the solution. They looked into the law, and under Title 10 U.S.C. 311, saw a phenomenon known as the unorganized militia that consists of all people, even the people taking these pictures right here, everyone. And they began to form themselves in units for their own self-defense and their self-preservation. Now, the way we stand now, and it's good that we're getting these views aired out, because 200 years ago, the British didn't get the hint until they saw dead redcoats out there. But this time, maybe we can get this out in the open and have things resolved. Because I feel, and it's concerning to me, and I'm being sincerely honest, that with the increasing polarization between the tax-paying public out here and what goes on, not only in here, but certain state governments, that the only thing standing between some of the current legislation being contemplated and armed conflict is time. It's one of the reasons I got in this movement, to help prevent that. Now, you can see from the last 2 years of sales from the firearms producers in this country, this nation is probably one of the most heavily armed forces on earth. And I have heard more and more people say, if one of these black-suited, armor-wearing, state-sponsored terrorists come kicking down my door, I'm going to blow somebody away. They don't call themselves militia. They don't even call themselves patriots. They call themselves American citizens who are getting tired of confiscatory tax rates, increasingly heavy regulations, which is, they believe, are leading them down a path to involuntary servitude. And one of the slogans that's been going around, especially in Ohio, is what I've been telling people, for those who think that this is just primarily an angry white male movement, is that if our ancestors would have been armed, they would not have been slaves. That's why people are beginning armed. Not so much with firepower. That's not the thing that makes it dangerous. What makes it dangerous is that they're being armed with knowledge. What you're going to see is a growing number of citizens, and you're seeing that now, that's why we're here, move away from the authority that is here in the Beltway and begin to create their own constitutional authority. You're going to begin to see this in the resurgence of the common law courts. You're going to begin to receive this, and I'm going to summarize here, in the formation of the militias. That's what came first, to defend ourselves. But you're also going to see this on the legislative venue. You're going to see our own candidates in our own elections, and hopefully that we can become a system which will attract others into a more constitutional-based system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Olson.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. The following statement will attempt to answer the question of the legitimacy and the need of the citizen militia. Not only does the Constitution specifically allow the formation of a federal army, it also recognizes the inherent right of the people to form militia. Further, it recognizes that the citizen and his personal armament are the foundation of the militia. The arming of the militia is not left to the state but to the citizen. However, should the state choose to arm its citizen militia, it is free to do so, bearing in mind that the Constitution is not a document limiting the citizen, but rather limiting the power of government. But should the state fail to arm its citizen militia, the right of the people to keep and bear arms becomes the source of the guarantee that the state will not be found defenseless in the presence of a threat to its security. It makes no sense whatsoever to look to the Constitution of the United States or that of any state for permission to form a citizen militia, since logically the power to permit is also the power to deny. If brought to its logical conclusion in this case, government may deny the citizen the right to form a militia. If this were to happen, the state would assert itself as the principal of the contract, making the people the agents. Liberty then would depend on the state's grant of liberty. Such a concept is foreign to American thought. While the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution recognizes the existence of the state militia and recognizes their necessity for securing a free state, and while it also recognizes that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, the Second Amendment is not the source of the right to form a militia nor to keep and bear arms.